Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda, and I'm a nursing educator. I'm creating this video today to talk a little bit about math with you. As a nursing educator and a past nursing student, I understand that math can be really challenging for a lot of students. It can bring up a lot of anxiety, and I feel like that anxiety can lead to poor performance on exams. We're going to talk a little bit about math and break it down step by step. When I started nursing school, I was lucky because I had worked in a laboratory previously where I had to do a lot of calculations. So I had to learn these calculations and get comfortable with them in that other role. By the time I came to nursing school, I was pretty familiar and comfortable with a lot of the calculations we had to do, which made math a bit of a breeze for me. Before that, it was a little bit of a struggle. I had to work to understand it. And the more that I practiced and the more that I used these formulas, the better I got at math. So today we're going to just do a brief video on some dosage calculations. So I'm going to walk you through my process, and my process is a step-by-step process. So we're going to start by looking at the formula I use. For a lot of dosage calculations, the formula that I use is what I want over what I have times the volume. And you can see that on the slide in front of you. So again, I take what I want, I divide it by what I have, and I multiply it by the volume. And we're going to go through a couple of these questions step by step so that we can break it down and make it much easier for you to understand. Let's look at an example question that you could see on a nursing exam. So, the healthcare provider prescribes heparin 5,000 units subcutaneously once daily. You have a vial of heparin that's 10,000 units per milliliter. What volume of medication will you administer? So, just looking at this question could bring up anxiety for some of you. Take a couple deep breaths and relax. We're going to go through this step by step. So let's start with step one. Step one, when I go back to my formula, is determining what I want. That's all you have to do for step one. So when we look at this question, we look at what has been prescribed. You might see ordered instead of prescribed. So the healthcare provider prescribes heparin 5,000 units. That means that what I want is 5,000 units. So again, look for those keywords of prescribes or ordered. That's going to be the dose that you want. Now that we've determined what we want, it's time to determine what we have. So looking back at this question, what I have is basically what's on hand. What's the medication that you have on hand? And in this question, what we have is a vial of heparin that's 10,000 units. Don't worry about the volume at this time. You're just looking at what you have. So again, we have 10,000 units. Moving on to step three, now we're going to look at the volume that we have. And so if you look at this question, we have 10,000 units per milliliter. That means that we have 10,000 units in 1 milliliter. So our volume is going to be 1 milliliter. Now what we're going to do is take what we found and we are going to put that into our formula. Again, step by step. You don't want to rush through these steps. So let's review before we hit that formula. So again, what we want is 5,000 units of heparin. What we have is 10,000 units of heparin, and the volume that we have is 1 milliliter. So again, we're going to do this step by step. Where I find that students get themselves tripped up is that they try to do everything at once and move through it as quickly as they can. You want to take your time and you want to set up the formula slowly. So looking at our formula, what I want over what I have times volume. So we identified that we want 5,000 units because that's what was ordered. So if we put that into our formula, we have 5,000 units over what we have times the volume. Moving on, now we're going to plug in what we have. And again, we have 10,000 units of heparin. So when we plug that into our formula, we have 5,000 units over 10,000 units times our volume. Now let's think about our volume. Remember, our volume was 1 milliliter. We have 10,000 units per 1 milliliter on hand, which means 10,000 units in 1 milliliter. Plugging this into our formula, we end up with 5,000 units over 10,000 units times 1 milliliter. And I'll show you this on the next slide, but if you look and see the 5,000 units over the 10,000 units, those units being above and below each other would cross out, which is going to leave us with just the milliliter. And that's what we're solving for, right? We're solving for a volume, which is a milliliter. So those units cross each other out. And again, I'm going to show you that on the next slide. So now we're going to simplify that formula. We cross out our units, so we just have 5,000 divided by 10,000 times 1 milliliter. So don't try to do the whole formula right now. You are just simplifying the formula. So we're going to start by doing 5,000 divided by 10,000, and that gives you 0.5 times 1 milliliter. Now let's solve our formula. So we do 0.5 times 1 milliliter. That gives us 0.5 milliliters. Simple, right? When you're doing these questions, the key is to avoid jumping too far ahead. If math causes you anxiety, you may find that you panic and you start to move through these questions too quickly. And I promise you, if you slow down, use this step method that I've described here, you are going to be able to answer these questions every time. So the key is to slow down, take those deep breaths if you need to, because when you panic and try to do something too quickly, that's where we start to make mistakes. So let's try one more question. All right, this is another question you could see on a nursing exam. The healthcare provider prescribes 240 milligrams of acetaminophen every 6 hours. You have acetaminophen 160 milligrams per 5 milliliters. What volume of medication will you administer? So let's again go through this step by step. So remembering our formula, what I want divided by what I have times the volume, our first step is to identify what we want. And remember, that is the dose that is ordered or prescribed. So in this case, the healthcare provider prescribed 240 milligrams of acetaminophen. So that 240 milligrams is what we want. That's the prescribed or the ordered dose. Now let's look at what we have on hand. So if we look at this order, this question, we have acetaminophen 160 milligrams. That's what you have on hand. Now let's look at the volume that we have. And so if we look at this question, we have acetaminophen 160 milligrams per 5 milliliters. So that 5 milliliters is the volume that we have. So let's review. And when you're taking an exam, if you're allowed to have a whiteboard or a paper to write notes on, I strongly recommend that you write out what I want, what I have, volume. So in this instance, if I was completing this question, I would write, I want 240 milligrams, I have 160 milligrams, and my volume is 5 milliliters. Now we're going to set up the formula step by step. Remember, don't jump ahead. You want to do it step by step. So if we set up the formula for what we want, we remember that we want 240 milligrams. That's going to be divided by what we have and multiplied by the volume. Now we're going to do the second step in the formula. So what we have is 160 milligrams, so 240 milligrams divided by 160 milligrams times our volume. And remember, in this case, our volume is 5 milliliters. So when we plug that into our formula, we end up with 240 milligrams divided by 160 milligrams times 5 milliliters. And remember, I'll show you this on the next slide, but those milligrams are going to cross each other out, which leaves us with milliliters, which is what we're solving for. This question is asking you what volume you're going to administer. So let's simplify our formula. Don't jump ahead. So simplifying it, if we do 240 divided by 160, we get 1.5. So we're going to use that 1.5 and we're going to multiply it by our 5 milliliters. Now we're at the step where we solve the formula. So 1.5 by 5 milliliters equals 7.5 milliliters. And that's all there is to it. So if you use this step-by-step method, I think that it will really help you. Sometimes students get caught up by the distractors in the question. So in this question, it was saying that we are giving the Tylenol every 6 hours. The question's not asking you anything time-wise, right? It's asking you what volume we're going to give. So you don't even need to focus on those 6 hours. Just look at the numbers that you need, plug them in, and move forward. Lastly, I just want to give you a little tip. So when I do math problems, I always complete my calculations at least 2 times. If I run through the numbers twice and I get the same number, then I know that I'm on the right track. I likely have the right answer. If you do this twice and you get 2 different answers, you need to go back and do it again until you get 2 of the same answers. That's going to prevent you from making any silly mistakes. So maybe you plug a number into your calculator wrong and you get an incorrect number. So always run it through twice so that you know for sure that you have that correct answer. And lastly, if you want to practice some of these questions, I've put a link to a Kahoot that I created in the comments section. So please feel free to try out questions there and see how it works for you. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I hope you all have a great day.